Speaking of a group that does good PR, I see our friend Akil in one of the old school Students for Liberty t-shirts, Peace, Love, and Liberty. I don't know if
Oh,
he's got a
nice.
question for you.
Love the t-shirt.
I wanted to thank you very much for this presentation. I was just curious on that same sort of line of thought about how liberty ideas can be really made more appealing to communities such as the black community. There was a book that I read a few years ago called Black Elephants in the Room, The Unexpected Politics of African American Republicans. I actually did a whole YouTube video on my YouTube channel reviewing the book in response to a remark by Candace Owens during one of her appearances before Congress. His whole thesis is that there is a certain species of conservatism that is very popular in the black community, but it is particularly race conscious. It's important to look at the stances that they take. If you look at some of the examples Fields lists in his book, you've got black Republicans' support for school voucher policies. They generally support those policies because they see them as ways to give black parents power over their children's education and to reduce the influence of white government bureaucrats in black communities. They also tend to support low tax policies, not because of any fundamental belief in free market orthodoxy on their part, but because they believe keeping taxes low leaves more money in black taxpayers' pockets so that they can use that money to support black-owned businesses and other black community institutions, thereby helping to improve black socioeconomic independence. After reading Mr. Fields' book, I discovered that, lo and behold, that viewpoint or something along those general lines is actually where a lot of ordinary grassroots black Republicans are at in their thinking. As he put it in his New York Times article summarizing the findings of the book, and I quote, one activist described his support of Republican politics as a way to achieve black power through conservative principles. If you try to sell limited government ideas to black communities based on the idea that blackness, black culture, black identity have to be either denied or sort of subsumed, and all public policy has to be looked at in a colorblind manner, that will never fly. But if you acknowledge the reality, the cultural reality of black Americans, which is that race is a very important factor in the vast majority of the lives of black people, then you actually can sell a certain pro-black and race-conscious species of limited government ideology, but that it has to be packaged that way if it's to have any hope of appealing to the vast majority of the black community. I was wondering whether that resonates or sort of can be reconciled with any of the information that you've dug up in your research.
Yeah, what a great point. Thank you for that. And there is a group called the Black Conscious Conservatives that I came across on Twitter. I'm going to be talking to Felicia on Thursday from the Black Conscious Conservatives. She's the head of that group. And they're exactly what you're describing, Akil. Right? They're saying, oh, no, don't forget about our black culture, because actually paying attention to that is how you go back and look at the way that progressives have ruined so much of what we fought and worked for, right? And if you understand progressivism, they would call it like a cancer, right? Like if you understand progressivism as a cancer to the black community, then you can make your conservative case. And so what I did, there's a recent article I did for Acton called The Black Church, A World Within a World. And I open up that article addressing this issue because you do hear from a lot of conservatives, like, why do we even talk about black and white? What's very weird about this to me, that is not a conservative concept. That's a very like Enlightenment rationalism idea of individualism. We believe as classical liberals in individual rights. In other words, the individual is the right place to draw the line for like legal responsibility. But we absolutely believe that individuals do the best when they are brought up in a healthy community, right? Like that's what it is to be a human being. And that's why we care so much about civil society. And so the point that I make at the opening of the article is I quote Denzel Washington. It's not color, it's culture. Right? It's not color, it's culture. When you talk about Black Americans, you're not talking about the immigrant from Nigeria. You're talking about a group of people who have a shared history and a shared experience. Once again, the Black church is kind of a really good example of this, right? There's a lot of things about Black culture that come out of that. And we know what we mean when we talk about, Black preaching style, right? Or Black music. Let's not act like that doesn't mean anything. It means something because there's a real cultural group, Black Americans, that I would say what we mean when we refer to there is ADOS, actual descendants of slavery. These are the same people who suffered under Jim Crow. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and that it's actually weirdly not conservative not to acknowledge it, right? That what true conservatives, and I'm thinking of like Russell Kirk or something, right? What true conservatives care about is doing deep dives on people's cultures so that you can understand their institutions of civil society and how those helped them to do well, right? And to survive things and to thrive. And so I 100% agree with this. I think conservatives need to stop talking about colorblindness outside of the law, right? Of course, the law is colorblind and neutral, right? Justice is blind, but we do need to talk about it when it comes to culture, for sure, and appeal to Black and Latino communities according to their culture. Much of which is the reason they're conservative, right? I mean, a lot of the reason that there's a cultural conservatism in the Black community is because of, for instance, traditions in the Black church and the Latino and the Catholic church, right? And so that's a huge part of the story. So 100% agree. Great point.